Hello, my name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, listed number 9 of 43 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, a customer growth expert, awarded RevTech strategist of 2024. In this week's episode of Scale Your Sales Podcast, my guest, one of those people that runs towards the fire when everyone else is running out? That's who she is. The way that she views the world as processes, as graphs, and helps other people to really absorb the impact of the data, meaning that she gets the data helps to explain or to highlight situations that they need to make decisions on. So she is a VP of Sales Ops, the operations of sales. So really ensuring that salespeople can go out and do what they do a lot better by understanding the data that they have. She's the one that collects a lot of that data, creates all the processes, does all the dashboards, and explains where they're best to invest their time, money, and energy. So it's creating that real efficiency. Really interesting conversation that gives real insights as to behind the scenes of sales. My next guest is VP of Sales Operation, a dynamic operations leader known for transforming revenue organizations and expertly integrating sales teams post-acquisition. She's been through a lot of them. With expertise in CRM and AI-empowered sales optimization, she embraces sales efficiency and focuses teams on high-value opportunities, driving seamless transitions and sustainable growth across complex multi-platform environments. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Celeste Bayles.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here, Janice.
I'm delighted to have you on Scale Your Sales Podcast, and I'm really interested to get into the conversation. But first of all, just explain to me, as VP of Sales Operations, what DISA does. In terms of employee background. I don't normally give guests a promo, but I'm really curious of the details of what it actually does.
Yeah, DISA Global Solutions is a background screening and drug testing technology that we can offer to organizations around the world. It's no longer just checking a box when you're hiring an employee. You want to make sure that they're the right fit from a criminal level, but also the right fit within the cultural level as well. And so we help organizations do exactly that.
I think that's really interesting, because often you get the right person across board, not just in sales, but the right skill set background that you're looking for, but the cultural fit just does not match at all, and it fails. And often this is an area that people overlook, and it's so important. So the cultural fit, how do you go about doing that?
Well, from a hiring standpoint here inside DISA, I think it all starts with an interviewing process. It's something that I've used historically throughout my whole entire career as a leader. As a leader, you want to make sure that anybody has the skill set to do the job. But I also think it's really important to look at the STAR method, where you are seeing that not only can they do the job, but you're also looking at how they act in certain types of situations. I know for me and the people that I hire today, there are certain skill sets that you need that might not be a great fit for someone that is doing accounting all day, or somebody that is on an oil field. It's all very, very different.
Yeah. Do you know what? I use STAR, which is situation, action, situation, task, action, results.
Yeah.
And I tell people, even the interviewee, I coach people to make sure they get the what they're worth. But even the interview, to use that method, because it's great of demonstrating behaviors. I've done this before. This is how I reacted. But what people often forget is to say the result of their action. So it's a format that helps you to do that. But the reason why I say that the candidate should also do it to the employee is because you want to know what the behaviors and the culture in the organization, you want to know what they do. So if you ask the question in that way, then you get a much clearer idea of the kind of behaviors that are acceptable. And that goes to the cultural, making sure there is a cultural map. So you've got to interview the employer as much as they're interviewing you as well. And this is a great method for doing that.
Absolutely. And I do love seeing more employers using the STAR method in their interviewing process. I know when I was using it years and years ago, like you said, when you're sitting down with the candidate, you want to explain exactly what you're looking for. And generally, I will say, this is what I'm looking for. I'll give it to them twice, and then I'll give them the question that I want them to answer. So that way they fully understand what I'm looking for, and I make sure that they know how to answer. It's always a telltale sign. Like you said, they might forget the result, but if they can't follow the simple instructions, that could be a telltale sign for your organization on if that person is a right fit for your group.
Right, absolutely. So there isn't like an AI, a data-driven process to recognize cultural fit.
There are all kinds of ways that you can utilize AI and data to find cultural fit. There are so many companies out there where you can answer questions about what your role is today. You can answer questions about what the ideal role is, and it will give you an alignment on where you sit today and how well you're sitting and how happy you are versus comparing to the role itself that you may be interviewing. I've used different methods. I think that every organization needs to find out what's best for them. But one thing that I know about AI is you gotta feed it a lot of data to understand your business and your unique needs. I think it's great. I think we can do so much with it. But as somebody that does use AI, I also know that I have to feed it enough information to have a better understanding of exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. The reason why I was asking in terms of DISA and the employee kind of background screening, you mentioned culture. It's and we're talking about interviews, hiring, assessing people. And particularly in sales, there's so much in terms of skill set of what makes a successful salesperson that is implicit. And the interview doesn't necessarily bring those things out. This is the mindset of people, their approach to money, and their outlook in the world. Because salespeople are great at selling themselves, aren't they? We tell people what we want them to hear. So it's kind of uncovering those things, but these are essential sales traits. So I'm really curious about how you go about identifying the right people for the right seat in your team.
Yeah. Well, I would love to sit here and say that every salesperson gets told yes every single time, but the truth is, I want to know how they handle rejection. I want to know if they get told no, what are they going to do next? That's always really important for me. There are certain things that I look for depending on who I'm hiring for. If I'm hiring for a small business rep, there are certain things that are going to be different with a small business rep versus an enterprise rep. A small business rep, I want to see how quick you are on your feet. I want to see a transition from understanding that you've got maybe 30 minutes to learn about this person, to figure out what their unique challenges are, and then to tailor your whatever you're selling to that challenge, how you're going to solve for that. Oh, and by the way, let me show you a quick demo, and then doing follow-up all right there. I want to see how quick you are. Whereas with an enterprise role, you've got more people involved. And I want to have a better understanding on how you spiderweb, that's what I call it within a company. You might start with this one person in HR, but how are you getting in touch with the people in finance? How are you getting in touch with the frontline leaders that will be using the product itself? I want to see how you actually work within that organization and build value based on the role that you're speaking to. So when you talk about specific traits, no matter what, you're going to sell to any size company, definitely crafting a message that meets the person that you're speaking to. Having your ICP in mind. So figuring out who your ideal client profile is and spending your time, the most time on the people that you know you can win the most. And so I like to ask a lot of questions on how you go about getting into a territory. How do you find out information about the people that you're about to talk to? What's the homework that you're doing before you get on that call? It's great to have some questions before you go in to a conversation, but you got to be a good listener. Listen to what someone's saying and then taking the conversation where it needs to go. And if you don't ask any of those questions on that sheet of paper, it's okay, as long as you're finding out more about that prospect and deciding, can I help this person? The last thing that I look for is authenticity. If it's not a good fit, be okay to say it's not a good fit, and then connecting them to someone else that it might be a good fit, a better product that might fit their needs, or a better solution that might look like an actual process within their organization, and maybe they do or don't need a technology change. But being honest and open with the people that you're talking to, I think that is so important in sales.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you for that. One thing that you said, I mean, all of it's interesting, but one thing I kind of heard of how important active listening is. You may have the research, but you've actually got to actively listen, because conversations can go in a direction depending on the buyer has a particular need that may have not been pre-planned. Something may have happened before the meeting, so you kind of can't always go with the scripts. I love that. But active listening, OMG research over the years of doing many assessments has and then interrogating a lot of that information, their research tells us that active listening alone, this is listening over talking, has a 375% difference that leads to sales success. So that, you know, just as you said, this is an absolutely critical skill that you need to have in your team. So yeah, it's really interesting that you bring that up as an important trait.
You know, I think the best way to be an active listener is to come in being genuinely curious. I always say, take the cotton out of your mouth and put it in, or out of your ears and put it in your mouth. But you take it out of your mouth when you want to learn more. And so many times when I've either been in a sales situation or helped out a seller, I will say, you know, well, what's the challenge? And every prospect or client gives this top level challenge, but it's all about those second and third level questions and just being genuinely curious of, well, why is this a challenge? What's going to happen if we solve this challenge? You know, who is it impacting today? How would it better, you know, your workload if you were able to solve for this challenge? Asking those second and third level questions really can take you to the meat of why somebody wanted to talk to you in the first place.
Yeah, love that. So I'm really curious about what practical strategies that have you initiated that enable the buyer to buy?
I think that's a great question. The first thing that I tell everybody is we have got to be easy to buy from. There are so many steps that, from a sales perspective, maybe behind the scenes, that, oh, you need to do this and you need to gather this and you need to answer this. And it can be complicated depending on what you're selling in the back end. But to the buyer, you don't need to let them see any of that. It needs to be simple. Here's your challenge, and here's the solution that I can help you solve for. And I think it's important to guide that buyer as you go through it. There are many, many situations as a seller or as a sales leader where you might be selling to somebody that doesn't buy often. Maybe they don't know how to buy. Maybe they have to work with other people within the organization to get the budget. Maybe they don't understand the right questions to ask. And that's okay. And that's where, you can put your expert hat on, hold their hand and guide them through the buying process. I love setting out, here are the steps that we need to take to get here, and finding out that end goal of when you want to go live or when you want this problem solved. Let's start with that end goal and let's take steps that we have to hit those milestones before we get to that end goal, and then gaining agreement on that timeline. When I know from my experience, gaining agreement on a timeline early and often is what gets that deal through the door on time.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Now, your role as VP of Sales Ops, I thought it was really interesting when you said you've been part of a company that's been acquired twice in 2 years, and current company has acquired 5 businesses since 2022. So I thought, oh, wow, this is a really interesting, background experience to share with the listeners about really what does that feel like, one, being in a leadership role, so you're kind of like looking in on it, and two, as actually being subjected to that as part of the employees. So give me those two perspectives of this situation, because you've been through so many, Celeste.
I have. So coming from my experience where I was with an organization that was acquired and then acquired again, as an employee, there's a lot of uncertainty. And through my journey, I am so grateful that I experienced, hey, this is what it feels like to be a part of an organization that has just been bought. Companies try to do the best that they can after an acquisition and talk about all the synergies and all the things that are going to be great. And you hear it and you want to, and you believe it, but still sometimes there's like this nagging piece, like, oh, well, but what's going to happen? Luckily, for me, I get excited when there's an unknown. I think about all of the possibilities. So for me, I was very, very excited, but I also understood that, it might not be like that for anyone, for everyone, and that was okay. And so being able to, have conversations and talk about the future and all the positivities that come from it, and time after time, just having that same positive mindset, was great for me. Now, post acquisitions, and now with an organization that has made several acquisitions, I can sit here and say, I know where you've been. I understand that you might not know what's going to happen, and you don't know timelines yet, but we're going to get there and we're going to do it together. One of the things that I love about acquisitions and bringing different organizations together is that every organization has this goodness. There is something that they did really, really, really well. And one of the things that really benefited us was that we saw the skills and the goodness in those other companies, and we wanted to let it shine. And so figuring out what that goodness, what that area of opportunity was, and figuring out how we can let that shine and incorporate it through the sales organization has been a lot of fun. Now, from my role as in sales operations or revenue operations, there's been a lot of technology that I've had to work with. Moving multiple CRMs all into one brand new system. Janice, it is not for the faint at heart. I'm going to tell you that right now. And, I got to learn a lot. I got to work with so many different people within the organization, which was great. And I think that that's a great tip for anybody that's about to go into a technology implementation within an organization. Don't try to do it on your own. Don't think that you've got the one and only plan. Gather agreement from other people within the organization. Have a better understanding of how they want to use that piece of technology, and figure out how you can build it to best fit them. But more importantly, how is it going to align with all the different departments that are going to be in that technology? And you can't.
It just occurred to me there, because I know that you've got lots of knowledge and experience in this, but I saw a real synergy in what you're doing internally is what we would do externally with a customer. And often there's a disconnect between the two, that you do have internal customers, you need that collaboration. And it's almost like that internal transformation is getting a deal through a large organizations where there's different stakeholders that you need to get agreement around the table as to the way forward. And there isn't going to be one person that has all of the information in order to get it through. So I just thought, oh, that's a great analogy. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. So, well,
so you mentioned about, CRM, and I feel your pain. I really do, having to, decide on which is the best one going forward, because it's always, well, if it's not invented here. So it's not only kind of like the kind of process and operations, but actually, as you were talking about getting the people on board as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not going to be an overnight thing. Patience, lots and lots and lots of training, and I'm so fortunate to have a team that wants to make sure that everybody understands how to use whatever piece of technology it is, and great minds to figure out how to make that piece of technology best fit our business and the role that's going to be using it. So I'm very blessed.
It seems like you're the kind of person working in revenue ops that actually runs towards the fire when everyone else is running away, Celeste.
I am always asking myself, is this the best way? And the answer may be yes. But as companies grow, you gotta always ask yourself, is this the best way? Because as you grow, you will have different needs. Sellers will have different needs. Sales leaders will have different needs. And from a revenue operations standpoint, you need to be able to pivot and get them what they need. Because I look at it from my position, it's my job to get sellers out in the field selling as much as possible, and I want to help them do it any way possible. So if that means I need to have some technology in place, if that means that leaders need to be able to see certain types of reports and dashboards, if that means that they need to understand new products and services, I want to get in front of it, because I want sellers to focus on the number one thing, bringing in revenue.
Yeah, love it. So tell me, there's always a bit of confusion between revenue ops and sales enablement. So what is the difference from your perspective?
So where I sit today with sales enablement, I look at it as training, from when somebody comes in the door all the way to, the whole entire time that they're with the organization. I also look at it from an RFP standpoint. Sellers aren't great at responding to RFPs. And so making sure that they have assistance in those areas, working with marketing and proposals and all the different things that will enable a seller to sell more. From a revenue operation, I look at that as more data analytics and how can I give the business the best information, the most real-time, up-to-date information about that seller, about that team, about that department, about that campaign, about that, just the account management, all of the things. So I look at it very data-driven and trying to find insights based on real data.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for that. So how do you communicate? Not everyone is data driven. They're not able to see the story in it. So how do you often communicate much of that data, whether it's, communicating it up or to your peers or down? What is the mechanisms that you use in order to communicate that data?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've learned is don't show everybody my Excel spreadsheet because it freaks them out. So to making it, you've got to make it very simple. So it might take a lot of data to get to the answer, but depending on if you are, presenting to executives or if you're presenting to sellers, people like pictures. So utilizing graphs. It's something that, I really, really like to do. Taking all of the data points of everything that I collected and streaming it down to some very specific topics that will give an overarching story for what we're trying to say. One of the things with data is you can tell multiple stories with data. And so from my perspective, I take a look at what I see, and then I think about, well, here's the story that I'm seeing. How can I lay this out? So, my 5-year-old son would at least follow what I'm doing, and then making it a little bit more complicated from there.
Yeah, love it. Love it. I know that you're a real kind of a dashboard geek and checkpoints and so forth. So I can imagine it's all kind of like visual images and colors and graphs and everything, just making it really simple. And the point is that only when people understand information can they actually act on it. So it's an absolutely essential role. So I'd like to ask your view in where the industry is going. There is from the increase in sales stack, the increase in SaaS, trying to solve a problem, we often just throw more tech at it. So there's much more kind of underutilizations of these processes that are not aligned or connected. But from a revenue ops point of view, what are you seeing that's happening now that you believe will refine itself, improve, transform going forward with what you see coming down the line?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed over the years, there have been companies that have specialized in one specific thing. And they did that one specific thing really, really well. And they created a partnership with one of the top CRMs. And hey, I'm on the App Exchange. Go ahead and plug into Salesforce or plug into Dynamics or go into HubSpot. And now I'm starting to see those companies add on more products and services to become more well-rounded. From a sales perspective, the more somebody utilizes a piece of technology, and whether it's more buckets or has utilization of that one thing, the stickier it is, right? So it makes sense from a business standpoint to add more products and services with that one piece of technology.
Yeah.
What I've found, though, is there are certain companies that do certain things really well and other things not great. And then their direct competitor does this other thing really, really great. And the first thing not so well. And so from a buyer's perspective, it's very easy to like, oh, well, I need this and I need this. I highly suggest take a break, just take a breath and figure out from an organizational standpoint, what's the most important. Don't rack up a ton of technology debt to try to solve a problem when you don't even know how you got that problem in the first place and you haven't looked at all the different ways to solve it. Especially like I was saying with AI coming into play, in order for a piece of technology to work for an organization, you've got to train it, you've got to build it out to your unique business. And if you don't do that, that technology is not going to give you the result that you need. So make sure that you've got the time and the effort, and maybe the people to help you build out the technology to solve for that one problem. And then final thing, like I was saying, just choose one thing at a time. Don't try to implement 10 things all at once to have one pretty bow. That's a lot for you to implement, but also it's a lot for sellers to learn. And you mentioned utilization. We can have all the best pieces of technology out there, but if a seller's not going to use it, you've wasted your money. So have some of your top sellers involved in the buying process. Let them see the demo, see if they can see something that would benefit them. I always like to get sellers involved when it comes to technology, sellers and sales leaders, because it's not me that's going to be in it every single day. I'm going to be the one that's going to be checking their utilization, but I definitely want to make sure that you put in a piece of technology that's meaningful.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for that. Okay, so who is your hero or shero, Celeste?
I think that's an interesting question where for me, I don't like to put one specific person up on a pedestal. I think we all have hero or shero qualities within us. I love to see people step out of their comfort zone. That's taking a chance, and that's heroic to me. I love seeing people, the working mom that's working a full job and decided to go back to school. That's amazing. I love to see people taking chances on themselves. And I'm that person in the background that, hang out with me long enough, Janice, I'll get you to believe that you can do anything in this world. And then once you get there, I'm going to help you do it. Yeah. So, I just love to see people take chances, and it's a hard thing to do. And when I see it, I love it.
Oh, I can feel your energy. I think I might be moving in, Celeste.
Come on.
That's fantastic. How can listeners get hold of you?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is either LinkedIn. You can shoot me an email, which I think you'll provide, or, text me. If you've got questions, let's talk. Feel free to call or text me anytime.
Fantastic. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you on Scale Your Sales podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and insights. So thank you for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast, Celeste.
Perfect. Thank you, Janice. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.